Hello, I'm Ruth Kushnevich. I currently work at County Council in their Children's Services Department, in their Information Governance team. We provide advice on record keeping, subject access requests, and we also handle historical subject access requests for people who've been out of care for a long, long time, coming out to us in later adulthood. But I have lived and worked in Australia in archives fairly recently. And I come from an archiving and record keeping background. So the children's social care aspect is quite new to me, which is why I'm here today. But I just wondered for our speakers from Australia and New Zealand, are you finding that because a lot of, as we've seen, a lot of the population who've been in care have been Aboriginal, Maori people, and their histories tend to be more oral than traditional record keeping? And I know that one of the things that the MIRRA project has found is that UK care leavers would love photographs and things to be in there that often aren't. Is there things like that that you would be working on to try and improve oral record keeping of oral histories as well for those people?
The policy for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and young people currently in care is for cultural care plans to be developed in which that connection to culture is maintained. But unfortunately, it's a paper document that documents that, and so I think that is actually one of the challenges, is to actually look at different ways to do it. And I know there's some great projects looking at sort of photo voice and other kinds of storytelling technologies, and so that's why I think it's so important to have that kind of experimentation with that, but to have that underpinned by a record keeping perspective, because a lot of those it's short-term funding, it's project funding, it might create some digital objects, but then they're at risk even worse than paper records, because you can't put them in the bottom of a filing cabinet and find them again in 10 years' time. So I think it raises a whole lot of challenges, but such amazing potential for it to not just be this written textual records, but to open it up in all sorts of different ways.
Yes, it's a really important point for New Zealand Māori. So the official record is all basically the written record, that's what's accepted, but there is legal precedent for accepting oral testimony, for example, in Treaty of Waitangi claims. That's become an accepted way of providing evidence. I think because the project I'm working on at the moment is so new, oral history is going to be an essential part of it, but I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work. So initially it's going to be about community building and working out what will work best for people.
This is for Frank. Hello, Frank. You said earlier the past, under your heading, the past is the past, and you said that you made a reference to new records being made. Can you tell me what you mean? Who's making new records? I didn't understand.
I'm sorry, the last part.
Sorry. You made reference to the fact that new records are now being made, and I just wanted to know who they were making, who was making those records.
Yes, these are applications for redress. So if you are eligible to apply for redress, you fill out a 42-page application, which has been written by somebody in Canberra who doesn't understand the situation at all. Included in that is a statement of how your sexual abuse has affected your life. You can write an essay if you like, but they've also given a box of words like sexual health, my relationships with my children, and you circle these, and that goes off to some body who decides how much money your sexual abuse is worth. It then goes to the insurance company that is backing the organisation. Many of these, of course, are church-based organisations, so they need insurers to say yes, we'll pay out on this case. it goes to, in the case of state governments, it goes to those people. In many cases, there's more than one set of responsible institutions. So if you're a state ward but given to a church-based organisation or another kind of, or several organisations, then each of those people will get a copy of your application and any paperwork that's associated with it. And the number of people who have actually applied so far is very, very small compared to the number who might be eligible. The Royal Commission figured about 60,000. I think so far, after 1 year, something like 3,500 applicants have been received. And this is, it's commonly talked about in our organisation that people just don't want to create new records. They don't want people to know their private business. And they're certainly appalled that they're being asked to write down very personal things about their sex life or their love life, or, you know, and it's incredible. And the future of those records is not clear. What happens at the end of the process?
Well, the reason I was interested, because obviously I was also in the care of Lambeth, spent some time in Lambeth Social Services, and I'm presently we work in Lambeth, Lambeth aren't, but there's an organisation called the Shirley Oak Survivors Organisation, which is SOSA, it might be worth looking at their website. And there's a young man, old man now, who was in the Shirley Oaks Children's Homes, the Lambeth Front Children's Homes, and he's worked tirelessly for the last 5 years to get compensation, and people have been compensated, and we're at the last lap. And I know that when I filled the form in initially, about 2 years ago, it took me 3 hours to fill it in, then I lost it on the computer, and I had to do it again, but the process still goes on. So I just wondered, but ours has been much more of a straightforward process than yours seems to be.
So, yeah. A lot of our members get halfway through making an application and give up. Now, I can't do this. It gives me nightmares. I can't sleep at night anymore. Just appalling.
Hi, I'm Miranda. I'm a social worker. I work for a local authority. Kind of listening to this today has been really incredible from all the stories I've heard. And as a social worker, I work in a fostering team, but I've also been in quality assurance. I'm very committed to the child's story and the child's lived experience. What I've recently experienced by writing honestly, openly, in the child's best interest and telling their story from the child's perspective and having a very good understanding of that child has got me into trouble. And I'm kind of working out why. And part of that, I think now, and it's something I heard at a branch meeting I went to a couple of weeks ago, is about litigation. And I'm kind of working out, okay, why is my local authority so kind of against, I think, us writing honestly? So I kind of beginning to think there's a mismatch now, that you guys and the MIRRA project are doing some amazing work, and I think you've run off down the road, and we social workers are left behind wondering, how do we write reflectively, honestly, openly, transparent, that will mean something to the child when they become care leavers and come back to their records? And I'm also thinking that in the context of professional boundaries, that we are told we have to work within these professional boundaries. And if we don't, then we're facing disciplinaries and possibly sackings and so forth. Yet what we're doing is trying to meet a child's needs and thinking for the future. And I call it golden threads, because I don't know, with any child that I work with, I don't know what adversity they're going to face in adulthood, but I try and leave things in their case notes because I know they'll come back and they'll want to read their files. And I want to put things in there that will mean something to them, that they can think, oh, do you know what, that social worker did care, but actually we're getting into trouble for it. So there's something about...
Why do you get into trouble?
I don't know. I'm yet to find out with my local authority. But I'm in a big challenge, and I'm happy to say that. They're pulling it down to professional boundaries, but they're not seeing the bigger picture, that it's about relationship-based practice. They don't like it because they favoured managerialism back in the 80s. And so I think as social workers, most of us come into the profession because we're kind, caring, compassionate, and we want to make a difference, to the lives of children who can't otherwise live with their families. But we are being penalised for it. So there's something missing in the work that we're doing, that we're all trying to do collaboratively, but politics, I think, is getting in the way. Litigation, risk adverse is getting in the way. So there's something missing about how can we come together and come back and look at the quality of case notes and actually making sure case recordings are actually recorded. So in my local authority, they don't case record. Social workers are becoming too frightened to. So there's something that we all need to do together to address that. Otherwise, we're not going to make a difference.
Thank you, Miranda. That was, to make 2 points about that, Liz, one of our co-design team, made the point of allowing workers to put into their files the 21st birthday statement. She said, wouldn't it have been great? It's like if all the people that she came into contact with, and especially the ones that helped and she had a good relationship with, had that opportunity, and when she gets her file, that's what she would see. It's like the chance to see that relationship. And so I guess as a researcher, my response is the need for research to actually tackle that issue, because that's one of the challenges with the Royal Commission recommendations in Australia, that it actually gets translated into don't keep records. It's like, because they'll come back to bite you. And so actually a week after I get back, I'm actually going to be talking with our social work department. It's like, so to mention what you said, and we've already started to have those discussions. We gave a guest lecture on record keeping in last semester as well too. So I think it is, because the third point is having, just before I left in our workshops, looking at some records, I was just, the forms that have to be filled out, I was struck by how they don't trust the social worker. It's like that was, as well as not trusting the child or young person, they're actually, a lot of it is about the surveillance of the social work in that kind of managerial way. And so I think there is a need to kind of unpack that and to, again, explore together how you can come up with a better designed records forms that don't penalise, or when, and what kind of governance frameworks can give that oversight, so when there is problems, they can be addressed, but it's not by being risk averse. Yeah.
I was going to ask if I could respond as well. Thank you so much for raising that, because I think it's been a really important emerging theme within the research, is that there is a disconnect between the desire of social care practitioners to serve their children and the young people that they're working with, and then this broader framework of organisations and systems that seems to wrap around that. And it's something that we've been struggling to unpick. What's the source of some of these issues around risk aversion and around kind of a fear culture? And I think it arises from different locations. And some of it's to do with the legislative regime, some of it's to do with regulatory regimes, some of it's to do with finance and resources. Organisations, ICSA independent inquiries, they also, as Belinda was finding in New Zealand now, they start to change the dynamic within organisations. People become aware all of a sudden that records are assets, but they're also risks. And so then they start to try and control what's created and how those are being managed. So there's not really an answer, but I think it's something that I hope that we can report on further with this research and in the guidance that we'll produce to support social care practitioners and information managers to try and demonstrate ways to operate within the current systems, and then to do the advocacy work with the ICO, Ofsted, the Department for Education and others who ultimately could begin that process of kind of cultural change that I think needs to underpin best practice.
This is a question for Justine. In terms of access to material that exists, particularly in the case of a child who's been abused or sexually abused, What level of cooperation is there with the police child protection team who can say that they are simply considering an investigation and they are then able to obtain any used or unused material from the relevant sources?
I hate to say it, but you're kind of asking the wrong person. This is very much in the legal team's remit. I don't think we would cease to seek that information on the basis that they're considering a prosecution or an investigation. Where it does affect us is once that investigation starts, we have to stop, because nothing that we can do is allowed to impact the police investigation. Doesn't mean we can't pick it up later. We're a long-running inquiry. We've got 2 or 3 years left to go. But an active investigation will stop us proceeding with ours.